But this young lady, Julia Bwoma, met me when? Last September, I think we met. And she was the winner of the REEBA Award, 2015 REEBA Award for New Business Startup. And, you know, in fact, I remember, I think I approached her going, "You look beautiful, darling," because I do stuff like that. And she didn't actually run away from me, which is a really good thing. But since then, she's also become the winner of the BAWR 2015 Young Woman Achiever and has a legal background, but outside of that is doing some really exciting things. And one of the things she told me about very early on was Question Africa, an organisation that she has founded based on the idea of Pan-Africanism and the African Renaissance. And I'm very pleased to say that she's joined us in the studio this morning. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's so good to see you again. It feels like forever, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
It's crazy. And we had a really good night. We had a really good night on the boat. No, it wasn't a boat.
Yacht.
I mean, I was like, yacht.
Yes.
I know. I was just thinking Shay will slap me for that. On the yacht, and really good night, really good evening. Both walked away award winners. Yay.
Yay.
But, as I say, it started to make me learn a little bit more about you and the multiple things that you're involved in. So, before we talk about Question Africa, talk to me about you. What's your background?
Right, so I'm originally from Kenya and I've been in the UK for the past 10 years. And as you said, I have a legal background, so I've gone through all the education part and I'm yet to start practicing very soon. So that's keeping it short, that's my background.
So when you're at university and you're studying law and you're going through, because let's face it, it's quite it's a challenging and it's a demanding degree and all the work that has to go in after that before you can begin to practice. How, in the midst of all of that, do you start setting up businesses?
Well, it all drives from passion. Is what do you want to see done differently instead of relying or blaming others? You just start questioning yourself and start challenging yourself. You know what, I think I can add value here or there. So it's not that people have a lot of time, it's just the commitment and the passion to see some change happening.
So how have the last 10 years been when, as you say, you've moved from Kenya, come into the UK? How did you find that transition?
It was very difficult, I have to say. I haven't gotten used to the weather yet.
Oh honey, you'll never get used to the weather. I'm born here and I'm not used to this weather. So, you know, that probably won't change.
Right.
But what about culturally?
Culturally, it was very different, and I found that half the time people had already some sort of preconceptions or misconceptions about me because they don't know any difference. The media doesn't really represent people of minority really well, so I was really misconstrued, so I thought that was really difficult.
And so did that influence even your decision to actually start this organisation, Question Africa? Because I think where I completely concur with you is that what we see in the media of Africa isn't Africa, or it's certainly not the whole picture anyway.
Yes.
So was that, as I say, a huge influence for you?
Yeah, it definitely was, because I still have ties in Africa, I still have family there, relatives, friends, and it's different because I could also watch the African media news. So the same news being reported in Africa and being reported by international media, they are very different. The situation, I think, it's put in a disproportionate manner when it comes to something negative, and it's very rare that we hear about any positive or any good things from Africa. I think the media, international media, focuses more on the negative than it does on the positive.
Yeah. So tell us, start telling us, what is the real Africa, the bits we don't see in the media?
Right, the real Africa is really, really beautiful. Anywhere in Africa, any country in Africa is so beautiful. African people are so full of like nice culture, family values that you can never get from anywhere else. You can find them in Africa. We have great community feeling or community relationship, in such that you do not feel alone or lonely everyone is so friendly around you. They don't judge you, you know, because they are there to embrace you, to help you. They're not there to put you down. Something else that we have in Africa is like very nice food, the clothing, the cultures. I think we have maintained that, but you don't see a lot of that being represented in the international media, I'm afraid.
No, I mean, I know, excuse me, historically growing up, it was always about poverty, and it was always about lack of resource and lack of richness, whereas, you know, having done my own sort of bit of research and looked into things myself, where I do agree with you is that, you know, it's the richest continent in the world.
It is.
And I don't think it's given credit for that often.
No.
So let's talk about Question Africa, okay? What is the purpose of this organisation?
Question Africa organization has two initiatives. The first initiative is on community building. That is, whether in the diaspora or in Africa or elsewhere, we are trying to bring back that idea of communities working together to tackle the problems that are facing us. You cannot do it as an individual, but together people can make more difference. So it's getting people to think in a certain way, in a positive way, and to come together and make the difference that they actually want to see, instead of complaining and just blaming each other. Is take action, stop talking. The second initiative is on education. So as you are aware, technology is really picking up, but then it's so sad to see that in some countries in Africa, education is still at 45% of the population, or the school-going children actually have access to education. So we're still lacking behind in that, and that is, we can come together as community of people of African descent and see what we can actually do to bring forward or to actually empower children to be educated and to catch up, so we are not left behind as the technology moves on.
I love that. And one of the things I found really interesting is the fact that you have called the organisation Question Africa. It's not Question Kenya or South Africa or Zimbabwe or Ghana or where have you. Do you see what I mean? It's the whole continent. What was your thought process behind that? Do you feel that we can take a blanket approach across the whole continent?
The whole approach about that is because Africa, we are interconnected together. It does not matter which country you're from, or even the ones who are not in Africa, the ones living elsewhere in the diaspora. We have our history together that brings us together. Individually, none of the country in Africa will be self-sufficient. We need each other because we are facing the same problems. So we need the resources, the synergies of togetherness in order to realize a renaissance. And that's like a complete reawakening and a new beginning for Africa, and that is very desperately needed. But none of the countries can do it by itself. We have to work together as a continent.
Yeah, and it becomes a cohesive approach.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, when we come back, I'd like to find out more about how we can get involved in that, and how, whether we are, you know, like yourself, directly from diaspora, or actually, you know, of descent. I know I've got my little piece, I'll show you that in a bit. And what we can actually do to get involved with the organisation, and what some of your key messages are to people out there listening right now who maybe want to learn more about Africa and more about our history that's associated. So don't go anywhere, okay?
Thank you.
And when we do come back after this track, we're going to be hearing what's happening, the latest on the roads from Rakeem. And there's still plenty for us to talk about this morning when we're talking about Warren Buffett and his initiative to help young ladies of colour.